According to the research made by the State of JS, NextJS is one of the most popular frameworks within the JavaScript landscape. Now, NextJS is created by a company called Vercel, and NextJS, in essence, is a React framework that allows you to build hybrid applications that contain both server-side rendered and statically generated pages. Now, the benefits of using a framework is basically more rapid development. With NextJS, you get things like out-of-the-box routing and performance improving. Now, assuming you're sold on the idea of using NextJS, the next question you'll probably ask yourself is, where am I going to host my Next.js application? Now, currently there seems to be 3 really popular hosting options for Next.js. Now, these options are GitHub Pages, Vercel's own hosting platform, and finally, Netlify. So, what we're going to do in this video is have a fist fight. It's Netlify versus Vercel versus GitHub. Who do you think's going to win? Let's find out.
Round 1.
Round 1, we're going to start with GitHub Pages. Now, before we look at capabilities and what GitHub Pages offer, let's see how quick and easy it is to deploy an application into a GitHub page. Now, the application I'm going to be using for all 3 examples today is basically a vanilla create next app. So nothing special. Now, what I've done is basically head over to my GitHub, and then from GitHub, I've created a repo and I pushed that application into it. Now, GitHub Pages come with every single free public GitHub repo that you create. And in order to create this website, you can see that we can just go to the settings here. Now, within my settings, if I go down to this Pages tab, and within Pages tab, I have the ability to set an action. Now, we have 2 options here, GitHub action or deploy from branch. We want to pick a GitHub action. And then from here, you can see that we get a workflow automatically picked for us. So mine's Next.js. If you don't have one, you can see we've got browser workflows here. Now, all we need to do is click on configure. Using this workflow, we'll basically create a YAML file. And the YAML file will detail the complete workflow that your Next.js application has to go through in order for it to build within a GitHub page. Now, I've already created and committed this file. However, if you're doing this for the first time, you basically just need to click on this big Start Commit button, and then it will check in your file and then trigger off a new build. After committing the file, a new build will be triggered, and then you can view the status of all your builds from the Action tab. From here, you can see that we have a bunch of new builds. In order to trigger new build, we can simply run the rerun all existing jobs. Clicking on this, we can have a quick look at what the build process looks like. Ta-da! As you can see, we now have our Next.js application hosted in GitHub Pages. Now, it's using the github.io domain, and you can see that it's using my repo as the subdomain. So I think the takeaway from this is that if you're using GitHub, setting up a GitHub page literally takes a few seconds, and as you can see, you can host your website with minimal setup fuss. So now let's have a look at what capabilities GitHub Pages actually offers. The next capability to think about is your YouTube subscribers list. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, this is your perfect time. Do it now, and you can do it by smashing on the subscribe button and helping me out with that pesky YouTube algorithm by clicking on like. Now, if this is the first time that you've seen my channel, then my name is John, and I do a weekly video every Sunday that will help you become an absolute coding legend. So if that sounds good to you, you know what to do. Now let's go back and have a look at these hosting options. Out of the 3 providers that I'm going to review today, not really surprisingly, GitHub Pages is by far the most basic. As you would probably guess, GitHub Pages only works with code stored in GitHub. Now, using GitHub Pages, your website can be served either through a free github.io domain or via a custom domain if you prefer. Now, as GitHub Pages is a free service, it does come with a lot of caveats. Now, the big killer against using it, in my opinion, is its license restrictions. This statement is taken from the GitHub page. GitHub Pages is not intended for or allowed to be used as a free web hosting service to run your online business, e-commerce site, or any other website that's primarily dedicated at either facilitating commercial transactions or providing commercial software as a service. Now that was a mouthful. Now on top of this commercial limitation, GitHub Pages also has a few service limitations that are also worth knowing about. First, the recommended size limit for your repo is 1 gigabyte. Next, your website will have to have a soft bandwidth limit of 100 gigs per month. And finally, GitHub Pages has a soft limit of 10 builds per hour. Expect to encounter rate limiting issues if you cap these. A final consideration is website support. There are no SLA times mentioned on the GitHub Pages website. Also, do not expect much help or real-time support if your website goes down unless you have a GitHub Enterprise plan.
Round 2.
Vercel is the maker of NextJs, so you would hope that they know everything required to host it optimally. Now, compared to GitHub Pages, Vercel offers loads of service and capabilities, which include things like automatic Git integration with GitHub, GitLab and Bitbucket, analytics, incremental static generation, image optimization and caching. You can opt to serve your website using a free vercel.app domain, or you can opt to use your own custom domain. Now, another really nice feature of Vercel is its marketplace extensions. From the marketplace, you can easily integrate your pipeline with technologies like Redis, Mongo, Contentful, and even Google Lighthouse. Now, after installing the Lighthouse plugin, you can then get performance-related metrics displayed within your dashboard when you build, which is pretty sweet. To speed up deployments, they also offer their own CLI tool. The CLI tool will allow you to create and publish different deployments all via the terminal without needing to log into the UI. Finally, just like Netlify, Vercel has the ability to create and host both serverless and edge functions. Now, one potential red flag of using Vercel as your web host is its fair usage policy. Now, you cannot use their service for CPU intensive tasks like crypto mining. Now, your standard Next.js website will probably not fall into this camp, but if you wanted to use serverless functions or edge functions in anger, it might. Now, furthermore, Vercel also requires all projects that are used for commercial purposes to be on a paid for plan. Okay, so you know all the features about Vercel, let's take a tour. Now, as mentioned, you can sign up or sign in with Vercel using GitHub, GitLab, or Bitbucket. I'm going to use GitHub in this example. Now, after you log in, you're going to get access to a dashboard, and from that dashboard, you can see your existing projects or create a new one. Now, when it comes to creating a new project, clicking on this button here, super easy. And then from here, we can either pick a repository from Git, or we can clone one of the templates that they offer. So we've got things like Next.js, Next.js Common. Now, in my example, we want to use the same Next.js hosting demo site. So we're going to click the import button. Now from here, you get some options. As you'll see, compared to Netlify, you don't get as many options here, but you can define some basic things. Now, clicking on the deploy button, what we'll see is that it will take about 30 seconds, 1 minute to deploy. My demo website has now been built and published successfully. From here, you can see that we have some next steps of maybe enable analytics. We can add a custom domain. We can even preview different branches. So if I continue to the dashboard, you can see we've got access. I'm using a domain which is Next.js hosting -demo-vercel.app. Clicking on that, you can see it opened. The build took about 2 minutes. Now, when it comes to a tour of Vercel, we've seen the project dashboard. Now you've kind of seen some of the things you can do. Now, aside from this, you've got access to view all your different deployments. We can see analytics. We can set up cron jobs or schedule tasks if we need to. Now, if I go back to my main dashboard, you can see that we've also got the ability to look at integrations. So from here, you can see that we can browse the marketplace, add in integrations for things like Mongo, all that good stuff. We've got some usage activity. So if you've got security governance concerns, all that kind of stuff, it's in here. Another handy feature is being able to see your usage to make sure that you don't go over on your payments. From here, we've got things like networking, serverless function, stats, edge functions, middlewares, monitoring, all that kind of good stuff. So I think it's fair to say, compared to GitHub Pages, there's way more capabilities. Now, hopefully you'll agree with me that the UI for Vercel, I quite like it. Very minimal, very easy to get your head around. And in general, I think if you use Vercel, you wouldn't be disappointed.
Round 3.
Netlify is probably the most used hosting provider for Jamstack websites in the marketplace today. However, does this mean it is the best option for Next.js? Well, like Vercel, Netlify integrates with GitHub, GitLab, and Bitbucket. Now, just like the other options, in order to host your website, you can use a free Netlify domain, netlify.app, or you can use your own custom domain. Now, you also get free SSL certs out of the box and the ability to create serverless and edge functions, and you also get access to a CLI tool, just like Vercel. Although the focus of this review is on Next.js hosting, hosting isn't the only capability offered by Netlify. And in terms of added extras, Netlify is easily the hands-down winner. So in terms of total capabilities, you can get all the standard build and deployment capabilities that you would expect. Netlify also ships with services for handling forms and form submissions, managing active users via an identity provider based on the GoTrue API, and out-of-the-box A/B testing. We are finally ready to finish with a tour of Netlify. So just like Vercel, Netlify has loads of different integrations: GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket. Now, after you log in, you're going to be presented with a dashboard. We'll come back to the dashboard later, but there's probably a few more things here compared to Vercel. Now, in order to create a new site, we can see that we can click on the big new site button and import an existing project. We could also pick to start from a template, so Next.js, Next.js Commerce, exactly like Vercel. Now, from here, we can import from any different provider. So let's pick GitHub. From here, we can then get our authorization, and I can pick the repo that I want to work with. Now, if I just put in a demo within here, hopefully we'll get our demo app. I would say that generally I find the search a little bit slow compared to other alternatives. But as you can see, we've got our Next.js hosting demo app. And from here, we've got the ability to then define all the kind of classic build stuff. So owners, the branch to deploy, the base builds. Now, if we click on show advanced, we'll have a few more options. But typically, going through this process, very similar to all vendors, click a few buttons and off the build process goes. So we've seen how quick and easy it is to host a Next.js website. Let's see what capabilities Netlify offer. So straight away, you can see that we can set up custom domains, HTTPS. Now at the top, we've got access to do things like deployments. We can create serverless and edge functions. We have access to integrations. So this is Netlify's version of the App Store. So we've got things like Contentful, Command Bar, Cypress integrations for our builds. Now, unlike Vercel, we have access to forms. So we can see that we can build a form within here and manage the form submissions. We've also got access to large media. Now this uses Git LFS to manage things, so if you want to store bigger files, we can have some sort of management. Now, one of the things that I think is really cool about Netlify is the ability to do split testing. So what we can do is just compare two branches together. Now, while this isn't going to be the best A/B testing tool that you can get on the marketplace, having some level of A/B testing to see how your different websites are performing is going to give you a bit of a competitive advantage. Now, aside from this, we have analytics, so you can see all the good things. And another differentiator with Netlify is the GraphQL. Sadly, there is a slight caveat that we need to mention when it comes to Netlify Graph, and that is if you're a new user, you can't use it. Now, as we can see from this blog post, as of December 28th, 2020, this feature is no longer available, and it's been moved to Netlify Labs. So in the future, I'm hoping it might come back. I'm assuming it's going to come back as a paid for thing rather than a free thing, but that is the caveat. Now, if you do have access to GraphQL, the nice thing about Netlify's version is that you can come to this screen, you get access to the URL, which gives you access to the GraphQL instance. They also give you some code, so you can just copy and paste that and get access to it. Now, within the screen itself, you get access to a GraphQL Explorer. Using this, you can then query your GraphQL endpoint and actually build custom queries and figure out the schema that you want to build. However, as I said, sadly not available to new users. Another thing worth mentioning is that you do get more site settings compared to Vercel. So within here, we can do things like changing the site name. We can do things like get access to a status badge, so we can actually see the build status within our GitHub repos. We've got things like setting environment variables. we've got things like analytics, logs, functions, identities, form management, and there's way more options here than there are in Vercel. Before covering pricing, I should point out that all the research and all the links to all the vendors' pricing pages can be found from the related tutorial that is linked to below. So basically, just in terms of pricing, GitHub Pages definitely offers the most basic service out of the three. Now, GitHub Pages only offers a free tier that comes with all public GitHub repositories. The service basically offers what it offers. And if you need to ramp up your solution dramatically, you'll likely need to move to another hosting provider. There is no way to really scale up additional build minutes, repo sizes, any of that good stuff with GitHub Pages. So I'd say only consider using GitHub Pages if you want to host your NextJs application for a portfolio site, or maybe you just want a dev site. Now, Vercel has 3 pricing tiers, and in the free tier, you get 100 gigabytes bandwidth, 6,000 build minutes, and 100 gigabyte hours of serverless function execution time per month. Now, Vercel will also allow you to host 50 domains per project. Netlify also provides 100 gigabytes of bandwidth per month. However, they only offer 300 build minutes per month. Now, as Netlify has additional services, it's worth noting that you can get 100 form submissions per month. And if you hit that limit, you'll need to pay an additional $19. Out of the box, Netlify Identity allows you to use over 1,000 free active monthly users with a charge of $99 if you need to exceed that. Now, as Vercel does not offer these services, there's no real direct comparison here. So just in terms of pricing, the decision between Vercel and Netlify is a lot closer compared to GitHub Pages. Now, Vercel offers more build minutes in the free tier. However, it comes at the expense of being able to host fewer sites overall. Netlify gives you more capabilities, you get more bang for your buck. However, if you don't need to use those services, you're probably going to be paying a little bit of money for things that you never need.
Final round.
I think at this stage it's obvious and fair to say that GitHub Pages clearly loses this fight.
You lose.
It offers the least amount of capabilities, and for me, there's just too many restrictions around the service for me to ever use it unless I wanted a quick dev URL. Now, as Netlify and Vercel also offer free tiers, I would always opt to use one of those services over GitHub Pages any single day of the week. Now, the add-ons offered by Netlify definitely make it stand out from Vercel. However, if you don't need these added features, the difference between the two vendors is pretty small. Yes, Vercel makes NextJs, however, Netlify supports all the features NextJs offers. Now, you will definitely get more build minutes with Vercel. However, if you're only doing a limited amount of builds every month, then you're probably never going to hit that cap anyway, so who cares? Now, both providers are both easy to set up and they're quick and fast, as we've seen. Now, I don't think you'll be unhappy if you had to use either vendor. However, if you really want my opinion on the winner, so if I was forced to pick, I'd say I'm going to go with Netlify just because it has more capabilities that in the future, if I needed them, I know they're in the back pocket and I won't need to re-platform. However, I said, I don't think you're going to be unhappy if you pick either option.
You win.
So my takeaway from this is that both platforms are pretty good. I personally think Netlify has a few more capabilities. However, I would be happy to host both my sites using either or. Now, what do you think? Are you currently using Netlify or Vercel? Let me know in the comments below. Now we have reached that point in the video that if you have enjoyed my content, please hit the subscribe button and the like button because that will make you a legend. Now, if you'd like to learn more about hosting, then I've created a video all about edge functions. So if you'd like to learn the best edge function provider, is it Cloudflare Workers, is it Vercel, or is it Netlify? You can click on the link on the screen right now to find out. Otherwise, I hope you're having an amazing day wherever you are in this beautiful world, and until next Sunday, happy coding.